so all health-related questions. All right, thank you all.
Take it away.
Oh, well, so I'm here in my gratitude. Is everybody fine? Can everyone hear me? I'm here in my gratitude to Dr. Lawton. I had a stroke, and I guess you describe it as a massive brain hemorrhage in September of 2001. I did not get to the hospital until the third day of my incident. And then when it was discovered after an MRI what was happening to me, I was transferred to the hospital where Dr. Lawton was working at the time. I was first seen and treated by another doctor. Without discussion to me and without my consent or understanding, I was signed up for exploratory brain surgery. I awoke on a gurney being taken down the hallway by an orderly, and I asked him what was happening, and he told me that I was on my way to exploratory brain surgery. I asked him to stop, that I had not given my consent to do that, and he told me that we did not have time to stop or we would lose the operating theater. I was none too thrilled about that, as I felt that I had every right to have brain surgery explained to me first and why I was having exploratory brain surgery. And he did not stop wheeling me towards the operating room, as that was his directive. I asked to speak to the doctor, and he told me that that was also not his directive. I then stood up on the gurney while hemorrhaging into my head, face, and spine, which I believe is called the subarachnoid pool.
Subarachnoid hemorrhage.
Hemorrhage, which I learned over time. Of course, in a gown with my back end in the breeze, which brought a lot of people running, and including the doctor, who had a fax in his hand and told me that I should sit down and do what I was told, that he was busy on the phone with People magazine. And that he had already got consent from someone else, and that I should do what I was told. The head nurse came out. I told her that I believed that I had a right to have brain surgery explained to me, that I had a right to determine my own choices and to have a doctor describe to me what brain surgery would be, why this choice was made, and I wanted it discussed with me prior to having it. The doctor began screaming and throwing a fit and telling me that I would do what I was told. I fired him, and he told me to be quiet and lay down. And the nurse, I looked at her quite pleadingly, and she, I believe, saved my life by telling the doctor that actually, no, I was lucid, speaking, in my right mental state, and that I had just fired him. And she ordered the orderly to take me back to my room. He was livid. He came to my room. I asked him to explain brain surgery to me. He refused. I asked him a repeated series of questions about how brain surgery worked. I wanted to know what would happen. I didn't know, would they cut off the top of my head? Where would they put my head? in fact, during surgery. We were in earthquake country. Would it go in a pan beside my bed? What would happen? What state would I be in afterward? What would happen to me? What were the risks? He refused to explain that to me. I asked for another doctor, and I would have to say all hell kind of broke loose in the hospital. After a little while, my family was brought to the hospital. My parents, my mom, I had called the other doctor at the first hospital, who was so incredibly kind to me, had called my mom for me from his cell phone. She had been gardening. She got on the plane in her gardening shorts, still quite filthy from the garden, and showed up at the hospital covered in mud. And she and my dad never left the hospital and were really amazing during this time. My sister, Kelly, several of my best friends came to the hospital and never left. They all with me demanded that I have another doctor. Another doctor did come to my room, and that doctor was this amazing young doctor, Dr. Michael Lawton. I really could use that box of Kleenex. Thank you. This is not a story that I easily tell. Dr. Lawton came to my... Well, it wasn't really a room. I was in neurological ICU. And as it was September in 2001, just after the 9/11 attacks, I was in quite a chaotic environment. I was on a wheel, which is like the nurses are in the center and the doctors, and the patients are around like this, and there are curtains between all of us. And everyone in there is fighting for their lives. In fact, the patient directly across from me died while I was in there. And I saw that occur, and his bed empty, and the machines that were keeping him alive be removed. And the girl next to me was a young lady who had severe curvature of the spine and had her spine rebroken in several places and spent the majority of her days screaming in agony. And neurological ICU in that condition and the way that it was in that hospital was a very, very rough place to be, with the televisions playing and replaying the 9/11 attack. And Dr. Lawton came into my space and looked at me, and I saw a young man who was not white-haired at the time.
Don't rub it in.
But I can tell you, doing what he does every day is an extraordinarily and extremely challenging occupation, and one that requires all of our support. He looked at me, and he had big decisions to make, because he not only was being asked to take over my case, but to take over the case of one of his superiors who I had just fired. But he saw that I was hanging in the balance, and that by now I had already been hemorrhaging into my brain for over 5 days. He looked at me, and I watched him make a very, very difficult and challenging decision. And I watched someone decide to be a good person, not just a good doctor, but a decent, compassionate, fine human being. And he chose to save my life. He took my case, and he spoke to me about my options. And at that point, my better options that it seemed to me, which he allowed me to make the choice, were to wait one more day and have another doctor who could come in and, through an angiogram process, put cameras through my femoral artery and femoral artery and go up and look into my brain. This happened, but my injury wasn't found because I had previously had to have surgery for what turned out, fortunately, to be benign breast tumors. But I had to have some serious surgery. And the blood was pooling differently inside my head. And the rupture that I had a clot in it. And so it was difficult to determine what was going on with me. I ended up being in the hospital, hemorrhaging into my brain for a total of 9 days before I had a second angiogram that demonstrated that my right vertebral artery had completely ruptured and was hanging by a thread. I'm going to let Dr. Lawton describe the surgery that I had, which was rather complex and long and difficult. The majority of people that have the surgery that I have don't make it. And even more complex is that those who do often don't have the opportunity to recover as I have. At the time, there wasn't aftercare, particularly the kind of aftercare that exists now at Barrow's. I have what's called a brain seizure condition, which, without the medication that I take and the incredible care that I have received since, would cause me to stutter, to see colors on the wall that don't exist, or to see undulating, the floor undulating and things like that, a difference in depth perception. I've had tremendous care and tremendous medical care, but I didn't have aftercare or psychological post-traumatic care or physiological care or any of the fine things that can happen here now at Barrow's. Recovery is very long from the kind of injury that I had. I didn't want people to know. I didn't want to be wiped out in my business, which frankly I was. I had lost short-term memory, part of my long-term memory. I had lost my ability to speak correctly. I had lost part of my vision in my right eye and part of my hearing in my right ear as a result of the way it affected the nerve below where my rupture happened. I lost 18% of my body mass, much of which I never recovered. I went home barely able to walk and in just terrible condition. The first 2 years of my life were unbelievably painful, the kind of pain that only brain pain gives. Ultimately, I would say it took about 7 years for me to be fully and wholly recovered. It's only now, in these last few months, that I have felt confident to hire new management and have been signed by a creative artist agency, and I'm really going back to work as I did before. While I've taken other jobs and while I've tried to work throughout this period to support my children and take care of my family, I've been very blessed to have great contracts with Dior and with other people over the years that were less demanding than the career that I had before. And I'm very grateful to those people. I'm very grateful to Mr. Arnault at Dior and the fine people who offered me the kind of work that I had that allowed me and afforded me the possibility to recover and to take care of my family and to move forward. But the gratitude that I have primarily is to Dr. Lawton, because Dr. Lawton took a career risk by stepping forward in the way that he did. And he oversaw my care in a way that I can't imagine any other young doctor doing when he was up against a superior in his hospital, because it was an educational hospital. Dr. Lawton now has been made the head of the Barrow Institute. This institute will and is the finest institute globally to be treated for these types of injuries. Anyone who has a brain injury would be in the finest hands that they could possibly be in at the Barrow Institute. This institute has been the champion institute of the Muhammad Ali Parkinson's charity for many, many years. I met Muhammad Ali when I was 18 years old and in the Miss Pennsylvania pageant. And he called my dad and asked him if I could be in the film The Greatest. And my father said, absolutely not. My daughter's going to finish school. And Ali told my dad, you could hide that girl under a bushel basket, but she's going to be a movie star. And my dad said, absolutely not. And as you can see, Ali knew a thing about that and became my lifelong friend and champion. And it's been my pleasure to work with Fight Night and the Parkinson's Institute ever since. And you can imagine my joyous surprise when I found out that Dr. Lawton was going to be the head of the Barrow Institute. And what a joy and a pleasure it is for me to be able to finally be in a position where I am in my wellness at the same time that Dr. Lawton is taking over the head of the neurological arm of the Barrow Institute. Therefore, I just want to say that I will continue to work with Dr. Lawton in a way that I can to be helpful to the expansion of the Barrow Institute. And I just want people to know on a global level that this is the place that you can come with your children, with your family, for all of your neurological needs, because Dr. Lawton saved my life. He not only saved my life, but he made a full life possible for me. He made it possible for me to be a fully functioning, fully capable person, friend, daughter, mother, an actress, activist, philanthropist. And I would not be able to do what I've done for myself, my family, and for the world if it hadn't been for Dr. Lawton. And I am here, as I said, in my gratitude. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you, Sharon. Well, you know, I have a lot of things to say after listening to you speak, but it makes me think of when I was a young medical student deciding what to do with my career. I felt like I didn't want to go into something like plastic surgery or to treat back pain or something that didn't have a profound impact on patients' lives. And so I chose neurosurgery. And one of the biggest rewards of my job is when somebody says thank you for saving my life. And when that somebody happens to be a Hollywood legend, an American icon, Sharon Stone, it doesn't get any better than that.
Thank you.
So thank you for that. And I really want to say thank you for coming to Phoenix, coming to the Barrow Neurological Institute, for lending your celebrity to this cause that we're engaged in. And that cause is to treat people with brain hemorrhage. And your story is one of a survivor, someone who has fought back and proven that they can beat this disease and survive and go on to have a productive life, a sensational life. You are a role model for so many of the thousands of people in this country that suffer from aneurysms and subarachnoid hemorrhage and all of the other forms of stroke that we battle with here at Barrow. So again, thank you for taking the time out of your schedule and helping us with this cause.
It's my honor.
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons why I asked Sharon to come back is because there's been a change in leadership here at Barrow, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about Barrow. It's an amazing place. This is a place that's unlike any other institute or neuroscience center in the world, really. You'll find most neuroscience centers in academic medical centers. It's centers where there are multiple departments and a lot of bureaucracy and limited freedoms for people to innovate and lead and deliver health care. What makes Barrow unique is that this is an institute that's purely focused on the neurosciences, on making discoveries, leading change, and innovating in this space. And that's why we're so proud of Barrow, is because it has these unique features that make it unique. Now, the reason I'm here is that, as I say, there's been a change in leadership. Dr. Spetzler was the previous president and CEO of Barrow. He's an absolute legend in American neurosurgery and in neurosurgery throughout the world. And he retired in June. He and his team led a search to find a successor, and I was the lucky choice to follow him. And it was particularly special for me because this is where I trained. To have the person who mentored me all those many years ago and brought me up from a medical student to a practicing neurosurgeon, to have him call on me to carry the torch and to continue his legacy and to lead the Barrow was a true honor for me. And so it really was a personal thing. I really was hopeful that when that choice was made, that it would be somebody from within the Barrow family, and lucky enough for me, it was just that. So I'm truly honored to be back here in Phoenix after 20 years in San Francisco at the University of California, where Sharon and I met all those many years ago when I didn't have white hair. But I can remember those days very vividly. I happened to be in San Diego when Sharon came into the hospital. I was at a medical convention, one of our annual meetings, and all of that was unfolding while I was 300 miles to the south, and I could almost hear her cries for help because I got the call and got in the next plane back to San Francisco, and that was when we had our first meeting. So I remember those days very vividly, and it's so great to see you and see how well you've done since then. It's a real joy.
Thank you.
I thought I would take this opportunity to just talk a little bit about where Barrow is headed. We have an ambitious agenda for the next decade mapped out. It's an agenda that I call Barrow 3.0. And what I mean by that is that when Barrow was founded some 55 years ago, there was nothing here. This was just an empty lot. And it was the vision of John Green to build an institute like others in Canada and around the world, but very few of them, out of nothing. And so Barrow 1.0 was about building it and having patients with neurologic disease come to here for treatment. Dr. Spetzler was all about Barrow 2.0, which was be the best and they will come. And so he took this place from, a regional institute in the Southwest to a real premier neuroscience center that people from all over the world would come to, patients with their problems, students wanting to learn, other neurosurgeons to work. It was 34 years under his leadership where he turned this place into really what it is today, this dynamic leading center for neuroscience. For me, those are big shoes to fill, but I see Barrow 3.0 as taking the next step and climbing to the next level, which means not only being the best, but also leading people here, reaching out further so that not just expecting them to come, but leading people to Barrow and showing them all of the great things that we do. And it's through Sharon and you lending your celebrity to our cause that I think will make things like that happen here.
Thank you.
One of the things that we'll continue to do is to provide excellence, technical excellence in the care that we give. And that extends from our neurologists to our neurosurgeons to our rehab therapists to all the people who manage the things after care that Sharon was talking about. And that's a real important part of our mission here. We've made recruitments on the clinical side, on the science side, and so we will continue to provide that excellence. The second area where we'll move is in the research space. We will be recruiting new scientists for our research institute. You can see the tower that we're in the first floor of. It houses a lot of our scientists, and we will expand our efforts there. I've initiated the Barrow Aneurysm and AVM Research Center, which is otherwise called BARC, and it will be focused on patients like Sharon who have had aneurysms. We want to find out why aneurysms form, why they grow, and why they rupture. And so our scientists will be studying aneurysms and what leads to those things in models, systems that we can study, and we're looking actively for new solutions for this problem. So I hope in 10 years we'll be able to tell you, Sharon, that all of your efforts and all of the work that we're doing will make a difference for people and prevent this from ever happening. About the reach, the idea of expanding or opening our doors even wider for patients and leading them to Barrow. Well, one of the things that we're doing to make that happen is the Barrow Artificial Intelligence Center. We believe in deep learning. We believe in big data. And we are going to get into this space actively to try and understand our outcomes better, what those outcomes cost to patients, and how we can provide the best value to patients with these kinds of neurologic conditions. We've recruited a former CEO of a startup company from the Bay Area to lead the effort. We now have a new supercomputer that's as powerful as IBM Watson, and we have a health system behind us with 43 hospitals and a tremendous amount of data that we'll be using to explore artificial intelligence in the medical space. The third thing that we're really focused on is education and teaching. And one of our initiatives is what I call Neuroplex, or in other words, to build a neuro workspace so that people in the neurosciences can collaborate, connect, collide in ways that really don't happen now and don't happen in other traditional medical centers. When people are divided in their silos and they don't interact on a daily or hourly basis, the synergies don't develop. So our Neuroplex will be a 5 to 7 story building right outside here on 3rd Avenue that will bring all of these great minds and tremendous talent at Barrow together under one roof and capture all of that energy and synergy. We expect to make that happen within the next few years. It will take some fundraising. Sharon has expressed some interest in helping us with that, and I'm excited about the possibilities there, and that will be one of our initiatives that we will see through. So that's just a taste of what Barrow 3.0 is about. I think it's an exciting and ambitious 10-year proposition. We'll be working very hard to make these things happen. There'll be many things that we haven't envisioned at this point that will be part of that. But I'm really excited about the future. And again, as touched as I am by your gratitude, I'm also inspired by your story, your survivorship, your strength, your character. It's a real inspiration for me. And I just feel so honored to be able to take care of patients who really fight back from really what is a deadly situation. And they suffer through all of the pain and uncertainty and the tremendous questions and doubt, and they make it, they survive, and they go on to be, like Sharon, real success stories.
Thank you.
So with that, I know you have a plane to catch, and I don't want to impose on your time, but if you need to leave, you can. Otherwise, we can take a few questions.
I'd like to know about the symptoms that you experience, if you had any symptoms at all. Maybe the aneurysms, you don't experience any symptoms.
Well, I had a stroke first. So when the stroke happened, I was standing behind my couch, and somehow I ended up over the couch, and I'd hit the coffee table, and I was on the floor. I describe it a little bit like in the movies you see Zeus hit somebody with a lightning bolt, and they just sort of just fly. It was a little bit like that. I don't really know what happened. Like I just somehow was sort of flung, and I sort of knew that I'd had a stroke. I just sort of did.
You were conscious at the time.
Well, I don't know if I became unconscious first. I don't know. I don't have a good, I don't have an understanding of time, or if I was unconscious and then conscious. I don't know, because I was alone. I don't know.
Miss Stone, are you able to name what hospitals that you were at originally, and how are you doing now health-wise?
It was the hospital down the street from me. Do you know what hospital that was?
University of California.
The first one.
Oh, the first one. I don't remember.
Pacific or?
Oh, CPMC?
Yeah.
California Pacific.
And now I'm doing well. I'm doing very well. I mean, of course, there are things that happen when one has this situation. You know, I can have a migraine headache, but that's not very often. And as we were talking about earlier this morning, the longer that one gets away from the original incident, the more healing that happens. So the more years that go by, the better I feel.
And what was that moment like when you saw the doctor after that chaotic period? What was it about him that kind of put you at ease?
I believe that when you see goodness of body, mind, and spirit, you can identify it. Just like when you see badness. We're in a period now in the world which is quite chaotic. And I think we know badness when we see it. And it's so unsettling, we're afraid to name it. But I think it's really important that we name goodness and that we name badness and that we choose goodness. And when I saw Dr. Lawton, it was clear that I was seeing goodness. You can look at Dr. Lawton now and know you're seeing goodness. And it's clear that he's here because of that goodness and because of his extraordinary talent. He looked at me, and I think that when someone chooses medicine and is good at medicine, but also they have the extraordinary innate sense of being a healer, and that medicine is their vocation, and they're not just ego-driven, you see that in them. And I believe that Dr. Lawton possesses those qualities. I don't know why I call you Lawton. Dr. Lawton. Dr.
Okay.
Michael Lawton.
That's okay.
I have to say that as I've never done something like this, I'm a little nervous to be here. It's an emotional journey, and it's a traumatic journey. So it's kind of a big thing for me to be here doing this. So you'll forgive me for my missteps today. Thank you.
Yeah, what I think it's important to appreciate is that, and this came out as we were talking over lunch, how surviving a subarachnoid hemorrhage is probably the worst thing that a patient can go through, because it brings you so close to death, and it's so extraordinarily painful and scary that it is difficult to talk about. And particularly, even in private, it's difficult to talk about, much less in front of all of these cameras that are rolling. So we appreciate your bravery in discussing this for us.
Thank you. Yeah, I can't, I've never really told anyone, you know, what I've been through. And I just would like to do that now that I'm in my wellness, because the journey was so unbelievably difficult. And because it was so painful, and because the pain and the difficulty went on for a couple of years afterwards, and the recovery was complicated, and because I didn't really have help going through that, I had a lot of complicated, difficult personal issues, and because I lost everything. I lost my career, I lost, my marriage, I lost custody of my child. I was financially ruined. I lost everything. And I was also in extraordinary amount of pain, and I was struggling to recover any semblance of health. And because I didn't want to tell people, because I had hopes that one day I would recover and be able to work, I didn't want to ruin my own reputation in the process. It was a very complicated period, and I didn't want to just tell my story in an effort to gain kind of sympathy. I wanted my story to have value. And now that you're here and that there's a possibility for this to have tremendous power and to help people on a global level, I feel that this is an important and valuable time to be of assistance to the Barrow Institute and to demonstrate what a story like this can do, and to bring my time and energy to facilitating the expansion of this institute, and to let people know on a global level that you can save your own life and you can recover from things that seem irretrievable, that you can fight back, and that we only use, 10-15% of our brain, that you have more brain to reach to, that you can work around injury, that you can go find the rest of your brain and get it working, and that I learned a lot about myself, and that I found parts of my brain that I didn't know existed. I found parts of myself that I didn't know, and that I became a person that I hadn't met, and that I developed into a person that I didn't know, and that I'm grateful for that opportunity, that was the gift of this, that meeting a bigger part of my brain, a bigger part of my soul, a bigger part of myself was the gift that occurred. And that was the gift of this. And while it was a phenomenally arduous journey, I'm grateful to have taken it.
It's such a recurring theme in patients. So many people tell me, like, aneurysms are unlike breast cancer, where people have marches and yellow or pink ribbons, and there's a lot of fanfare. When you have a ruptured aneurysm, sometimes you just don't get the attention that these other diseases get, and all these patients feel that they deserve that as well. And your story is just like that. Even surgeons are guilty. We kind of congratulate ourselves when our surgery is done and everything went well and the aneurysm is fixed, but that's not where it ends for the patient, and it's a long recovery for many, and it takes months and years and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears, and it's just a real tribute to you and the thousands of others who fight back from this.
Yeah, I think it would be terrific, and will be terrific, particularly here, because there'll be an opportunity for people to know each other, to be able to speak to each other, to be able to help one another. It is a very alone journey. It would be and will be amazing for patients to be able to help each other, speak to each other, cheer each other on, talk about what it's like, know one another, discuss the journey. It is one hell of a journey, and I am so looking forward to championing the opportunity for others that do that.
Can you speak about how you two reconnected after 16 years?
That was a great moment, right?
It was. Do you want me to describe it? Or? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, so I had just taken the job and had not yet moved to Phoenix. And Dr. Spetzer invited me to come to Muhammad Ali's fight night. And so I'd never been, all these years I had been affiliated with Barrow, I'd never been to the celebrity fight night, so I figured I better check it out and see what it's all about. And lo and behold, Sharon was there, and so I had to kind of sneak my way through the security lines and bull my way across the detail there. But finally we connected, and she was very gracious. She spotted me and hugged me right then and there, and I thought we were done. But then when she got up on stage to introduce her her portion of the show, she called me up there and made me give a little speech there. But no, that's how we reconnected, and it's been really nice to reconnect and see you again.
It's just for me that that you're the head of this place is the most fitting possible, next step of this journey for both of us. And nothing could make me happier that almost simultaneously you're the head of this, my kids are all together, and I'm going back to work. It just feels like the beautiful, beautiful step in this story that we have this opportunity to do something wonderful together, and my gratitude is just unending.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
Question for Dr. Lawton. Can you extrapolate on Barrow 3.0 with regards to, say, neurological ER recovery efforts, research efforts regarding not just neurological, brain-related incidents, problems, strokes, IE,
Yeah.
but also with regards to Barrow's work with Alzheimer's research, CTE, concussion, and those? How are you going to be able to synergize all of these individual research institutes in the network, and then out of the network with the Arizona Alzheimer's Institute that's all bringing these research facilities together?
Yes, thank you. That's a great question because, as you've alluded to, the Barrow is such a rich place in its breadth, and we view all of the brain and all of the neurosciences as our oyster or as our turf, and we will take it all on. It's not just aneurysms and subarachnoid hemorrhage. We have the Muhammad Ali Center for the study of Parkinson's disease. We have the Fulton ALS, Lou Gehrig's Disease Center. We have Javier Cardenas at the Concussion Center that's studying chronic traumatic encephalopathy. We're a leading center for professional athletes to come and be evaluated for their concerns and their conditions as a result of sports. It's one of the reasons Muhammad Ali came to Barrow all those years ago is because he recognized our strength in these fields. The building, as I alluded to, is filled with researchers studying these various neurologic problems and making advances. We want to be the place that's innovating and leading in all of these different areas, not just neurosurgery, but in neurology, neuropsychology, neurorehab. We have a fully integrated neuroscience institute here, and we are laser focused on just that. We are not going to be distracted by other disciplines in other areas of medicine. We're focused on the brain, the spine, the spinal cord, and that is our mission. As an example, to your earlier question about stroke and what we're doing in the ER, our Barrow Emergency Stroke Treatment Unit is an example of how we're leading the way. This is a truck with a CAT scanner on the back. It goes to the patient with the stroke. It doesn't wait for the patient to come to our ER because time means loss of brain function, and every minute counts. So what we have done, we've taken the initiative, we're the only place in Arizona, in the region even, to take this mission, this cause to the streets, to get patients the treatment they need faster, bring them into a center where they can be treated faster, and we're getting better outcomes as a result. Now, as far as Barrow's 3.0 is concerned, we want our outcomes and our quality to emanate. We want people from whatever health system, whatever state, whatever country to come to Barrow. We view ourselves as an international center of excellence, and our doors are wide open to all who seek us, and that's our mission.
Okay, with regard to the operation that was done on Sharon, what advances have occurred in performing that operation in the last 16 years? Is it easier now? Is it easier?
Well, yeah, there have been tremendous advances, and actually Sharon's an example of how our field has changed dramatically in the last 20 years. 20 years ago, when I was here as a resident, if Sharon came to me, I would have done open brain surgery for her. Because our technologies have evolved, she had an endovascular treatment, which meant going through the femoral artery, as she mentioned, and going up with a catheter to treat the problem with a catheter and a coil. And those devices have evolved even further since that episode for her. So things are rapidly evolving. I felt very fortunate that I didn't have to do open surgery. It would be like someone putting paint on the Mona Lisa. I didn't want to have to cut her head or anything. So it is an example of how the technology has helped us deliver care to patients in a less invasive way.
Was the original surgery you were to undergo a different surgery than what you recommended when the doctor that you disagreed with not having those rights patient?
Yes.
Is that a different procedure recommended?
Oh, yes. I eventually chose this more modern surgery that was new at that time. I did this with the camera, catheterized, and I have platinum, the balls instead of an artery. I no longer have the artery. The artery was disintegrated, and it was too late to do any reparations to my artery. I don't have my right vertebral artery any longer. I think you could probably explain that surgery a little better than I can.
Yeah, happy to. We all have two vertebral arteries that fuse to form one. It's like a Y that's turned upside down. And so one of the limbs that forms that Y can be sacrificed. And in Sharon's case, because it was damaged by the hemorrhage, we could sacrifice it, and the other one was competent to take over. So she didn't need the right vertebral artery. The left was plenty strong, and we were able to do a very simple treatment for her.
Did you face any blowback from recommending a different procedure than your superiors at UCSF?
Well, I always believe in doing what's best for the patient, and this was clearly the best treatment. And I think in retrospect, Sharon's case is not uncommon in that sometimes when you do your first test, you don't see the problem so clearly, and it took some time and a second test to really know exactly what was causing the hemorrhage. And so that waiting time and better evaluation really led to the right therapy at the right moment.
Dr. Lawton, you touched on this, but can you speak personally about what this means now to have this job, have this new job for you, but moreover to take over, like you said, for your mentor, and what that means to you to continue what he's built here?
Well, I hold Robert Spetzer in the highest regard. My life would be a different thing if it weren't for him. When I came to Arizona, I thought I wanted to be a brain tumor surgeon. I thought I wanted to study neurosciences. I came here and I watched him operate, and I knew almost immediately that I wanted to be a vascular neurosurgeon, that surgical technique was the thing that really excited me more than the science behind it. And he inspired the rest of my career. And everything that I've done since has been molded, influenced by him and the way he conducted his practice and conducted his life. Really a truly inspiring mentor for me. So, yes, coming back and taking his job, being asked by him to lead his institute, really was profoundly meaningful. And it was also profoundly meaningful to me that the leadership be someone who had been here, who had been trained and schooled and evolved in that system, because many of the other candidates that were considered were not from here, and so it was special.
Any other questions?
¿Cuánta gente muere por aneurysma? Porque ella dijo que mucha de la gente que si es operada no sobrevive. ¿Cuánta gente muere?
About how many people die from aneurysm?
That's a great question. So every 18 minutes in America, somebody has a subarachnoid hemorrhage. Those who have subarachnoid hemorrhage, about half of them will die from it, either from the initial rupture or from the after effects. It's about 30,000 people annually in this country, and so it's a major health problem. Stroke is even bigger. The traditional stroke that we think about is blockages of arteries, and the numbers for that are staggering. They're tenfold what I just quoted for hemorrhagic stroke. And stroke is one of the top 3 leading public health problems in this country because of our diet and our lack of exercise and high blood pressure and a whole host of other factors. So, this is a major problem, and like I said before, we're committed to addressing these. This is the busiest neuroscience center. We do more brain operations than any place else in the country. We're the biggest training center for helping or developing physicians who care for these problems. So this is what we do. This is our specialty here.
All right.
Thank you all very much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
I'd also just like to say one thing. You have all been extraordinarily kind and gracious, and without your help, we wouldn't have gotten to where we have gotten to with HIV/AIDS. And I would like to enlist your help with these neurological issues. I know that with your help, we can make the same kind of advancements, but it will take your help to do so. I'd like to count on you. I really do thank you, because what we've done and where we've gone with HIV/AIDS is because of you. And I want you to know that I know that, and you've all shown up, you've all done so much, and you can see how far we've come. And I know that we can do this with neurological issues, with all of them. And I understand that it's touching all of our families in a variety of different ways. So I'd like to thank all of you, and I'd like to count on all of you. Thank you very much. Nice to meet you.
Medical debt. She frequently serves as a resource for policymakers and the media on consumer credit issues. Ms. Wu is the lead author of the NCLC Trieste Fair Credit Reporting Act and has been